My name is Szymon Machajewski, and my doctoral dissertation is in gamification of introductory college courses. I also work closely with Blackboard on development of tools. If you do have Blackboard on your campus, perhaps you've used such software as BBStats or Login As. And recently, I also created an Amazon Echo integration with Blackboard. But my passion is in teaching, and I do that at Grand Valley State University, where I teach Introduction to Computing with about 150 students per semester. And this class was basically my inspiration to doing this research in intrinsic motivation. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thought I want to share is this pyramid. And as you look at it, I think that you might recognize it. Plenty of people, especially in instructional design and also in educational technology, bring out this as really the goal for increasing student success, engagement. However, if you look closely at this pyramid, it is actually not based on research. It is based on a 1946 paper which did not have as a goal student engagement, but showing more of a relationship between various styles of teaching. So oftentimes in teaching and learning, we operate in this area of allegories and this area of myths. And so what we're trying to do, especially when it comes to gamification, is to look at research and look at what really is working and what isn't. Now we have some evidence that shows that people will not leave their basements, but they will play World of Warcraft. We know that kids will sneak out in the middle of the night to play Minecraft. So there is some evidence culturally that we have that games are very engaging, but we definitely want to consider what is happening there in terms of peer review research. So I'll attempt to share some of that with you. Of course, I encourage you to look at my dissertation where about 60 pages of literature review are present. And so you don't have to read it, I just need you to cite it. What I do want to encourage you to do is in the resources we have some links to ResearchGate, where I have a project where I continue to provide some updates on gamification. And we see certainly research being posted by American Psychological Association, even dealing with violent games, showing that playing even video games is beneficial to learning and to training the mind for problem solving. However, the kind of gamification that I want to talk to you about today is not video games. It is gamification of academic courses, which can be done with even limited technology. So why are we talking about gamification now? Well, first of all, there is a lot of research being done in terms of student success. We want students to be successful, to graduate, to have good jobs. We want this promise of college to be something that we can be proud of and we can honestly recommend it to students. We know from research, for example, of Professor Hattie from Australia, and a link to his research is in the ResearchGate project, where he had 800 meta-analysis studies, and he found that many of the things that we look towards when it comes to engagement and achievement are not true. Putting computers in schools, looking at background of students, modifying curriculum, those things have minimal impact on students. His research pointed to the fact that if we focus on the teachers and their expertise and the relationships with students, that is where the biggest gain takes place. So what I want to first note is that there is a reciprocal value to engagement. If the instructor is engaged, students tend to follow that emotional impact and they tend to be engaged as well. This is true, or this is the case often in the papers that are published about education where a teacher is trying something new, and they report it as very successful. Their students are responding to this beautifully. And then someone else is trying it, and it just doesn't work for them. So one of the reasons why this might be the case is because when it's my idea, when I'm trying something new, I am very excited about it, and suddenly students respond to that engagement through the reciprocal quality of engagement. So that's why my first slide here really has to do with the background and where our teachers today are coming from. So at the end of the 90s, we have this direction of positive psychology, which basically means that we no longer are focusing only on people who are sick, but we are now focusing our psychological efforts and research on people who are doing well, but we would like them to do very well, and we would like them to exceed at their satisfaction in employment. We want them to be engaged employees. We want students not just to pass, but we want them to love the subject matter that they are pursuing. So that's positive psychology, and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is a professor from University of Chicago who developed this theory of the flow, meaning that you're involved in a activity where you're totally engaged, wired in, perhaps like the programmer that is spending all their time programming because they love what they're doing, and the time just flies. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi would be sort of the basis for this digital movement of gamification. It's important to mention that gameful approaches and gameful thinking is not new at all. In fact, in the 70s, we have plenty of examples of trying to use games and appreciating play for the key resource that it is. Bernard de Coven happens to be an author of The Well-Played Game, and for many years now, people like him were advocating that play is the key, not just to learning, but to a happy life. So the second point I've noted here are books that are using this positive psychology and are trying to improve what already is working. So Good to Great by James Collins, Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal, a book that talks about how games and gamers have qualities that might influence our entire culture. When we play games, we tend to be very optimistic, and when we play games, we tend to grow empathy for those we play with. So I recommend that book as well. Of course, The Drive by Daniel Pink, which talks about the self-determination theory, which was created by Deci and Edward and Deci, and this was in 2000. But Daniel Pink took it sort of mainstream to business, and of course the self-determination theory talks about three things that are required to enjoy anything, and especially to enjoy an academic course. One of them being autonomy, meaning you have to have choices, you need to be allowed to do things on optional basis to enjoy them. Second one is purpose. So in a course, the first paragraph in your course should always be an epic meaning, like in a game. You're the only one who can save the galaxy. But in a course, it could mean the reason why this course is important, because. And so then you, of course, present this meaning, the purpose. And the third is mastery. And so mastery simply means that as you look back, you can see progress. And this introduces, especially in a course, this need for immersive feedback. Right now, we do have grades. However, there are problems with grades. They are an extrinsic motivator. Often, money is tied to them, either from parents or from scholarships. So grades are not a great motivator today, and often they do not show the mastery level, because you, of course, can cheat and you can get the grades without the mastery. So then, of course, in 2011, we have introduction of certain tools that made gamification popular with educational institutions and teachers, like the Class Dojo for K-12 systems, where you can communicate even with parents on the activities of students, how well they're doing, primarily to create a well-disciplined environment in the classroom. Of course, we have Mozilla Open Badges, which introduces this kind of a gamification strategy in not just education, but also in employment, to show granular skills instead of high-level certifications or degrees. But Mozilla Open Badges and badges in general go back to Sir Robert Baden-Powell, who established scouting in Great Britain. And of course, his goal, if you go to the Wikipedia about scouting, his goal was to teach people without them knowing that they're being taught through various activities and focusing on building skills. So even those early principles really apply to what we try to accomplish with gamification today. Finally, we have Classcraft, which is a great, again, I believe a K-12 approach where a classroom students take on various roles and help one another to accomplish the goals of the class. And Gradecraft, more recent, which comes from University of Michigan. They received almost a $2 million grant to develop this. This is an LMS which allows you to turn completely your class into a game where students can choose assignments they are going to complete and then progress with gamification methods. So let me maybe stop here and just do a quick definition of what gamification is. Ditterding, a researcher from Germany, calls gamification the application of game mechanics and dynamics in non-game environments. So we see business, your credit card points, your loyalty programs being a gamification tool, but throughout various commercial systems, we see the attempt to apply gaming principles or mechanics into non-game context. So going back now to Gradecraft, this is a great project, and you can join Gradecraft today. However, there is a variety of courses and environments in education. I specialize in introductory courses. Why? Because we have high enrollment courses often taught by people who cannot control the curriculum, who can't just say, I'm going to use Gradecraft, I'm going to turn my class totally into a game, because they are typically even part-time employees who are teaching coordinated courses. However, I think the value of those introductory courses is in the fact that they are the greatest business for our schools. They bring in the most money. They also have the mission of keeping students in school and having them fall in love with the subject matter. So introductory courses, I believe, require a different style of gamification than what Gradecraft is offering. And it has to be gamification that can be added or removed, so it does not force the instructor to take freedoms with the curriculum. And that's what I will present to you later on. In advanced classes, the situation is different. Sometimes the students are already so engaged and they are focused so much on the subject matter, then you don't have to provide any additional tools of engagement. By now, they were weeded out. They put so much investment into the subject matter that they simply are already fine with various approaches by instructors. So the last part of the slide here talks about Atari in 1972. The reason why this is important is because faculty that we are hiring today are from the generation of the startup of computer video gaming. And these are faculty that often have experienced this kind of a total engagement, the Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's flow in their life at some point. And so they were inside of this immersive feedback environment. And so when you say games, they respond. So because the faculty now are coming in with those experiences, I would make a case that this is an opportunity then to have these faculty be highly engaged, which is going to result now in students also reflecting that engagement. There was a paper by Prensky in, I think, 2010 or so, or 9, about these natives, digital natives. And so the point that Prensky was making was that these students know what it means to be engaged at home, which is why when they come to school and there are no special efforts to engage them, they basically check out. Now, we know by now that this whole myth of digital natives does not exist, and especially today, we need to be careful that we don't assume that students know a lot about technology, because oftentimes they do not. But I think what Prensky was saying is that, yes, some students know what it means to be very much engaged through technology. They know what it means to be engaged, and their expectations for engagement are different than previous generations. So the point I'm making is that I believe we have faculty now who are in the same position. They know what it means to be highly engaged, and they have the need to continue or to rekindle this kind of engagement, which means that they will be willing to teach introductory courses. And of course, if you know anything about that situation, often faculty refuse to teach introductory courses because they're boring, because it's basic knowledge, and there's not a lot of peer respect in teaching the introductory courses. However, through gamification tools, we are able to share certain missions that are advanced and certain parts of our own research that are all optional to this group of students, and that engages the faculty. So with this introduction, I do want to share with you words by Dr. Stuart Brown, who is one of those evangelizers for play. And the point he's making is that the opposite of play is not work, that it is depression. And this is, I think, very important as we look forward to being more emotionally intelligent, also as faculty. Being emotionally intelligent, meaning that it is not about knowledge passing anymore. There's always a website out there or a YouTube video that can pass a similar knowledge to what you have prepared for your lecture. But it is about emotional intelligence and setting up an environment where students change within the affective domain their approach to your subject matter. And so stereotype threat is one of those areas that we continually are looking at to avoid, especially when it comes to computing. And we have other difficulties, emotionally speaking. We have problems, of course, in STEM courses with gender representation not being equal. However, to handle that, speaking about the gender inequality in the classroom, we might polarize the genders and actually create employees later who are, again, polarized. And we see today that, I think it was the Harvard Business Review posted a paper that women are leaving tech industry in droves. And so they estimated that about 50% of women who are currently in engineering are going to quit those jobs because of culture that is hostile. So what we need to do is perhaps build more empathy within the classroom and change even the terminology in technology away from, hey, this technology is sexy, or, oh, even my mom could do that, which is unfortunately very common. So one thing that can happen is by teaching emotional intelligence in STEM courses and by applying gamification, because we have some studies from McGill University that show that even playing a game like Rock Band for 15 minutes can build empathy between those who are involved in the game. So playing together could be one of those ways to build empathy for each other and create work environments that are actually more supportive of differences. We certainly have some frameworks for evaluating courses when it comes to gaming. One of them is octalysis, where you can specify what you do in the classroom and then check where perhaps you can build a more gameful design into the classroom. So this brings me to specifically Blackboard Learn, and what can we do in Blackboard Learn to increase this idea of gamification? The main principle is in immersive feedback. So we want to search for ways to provide detailed feedback, and based on that, we can then create a rewards, or we can include it in games. There are two areas to focus on. And in my ResearchGate papers, you'll find that I'm developing a theory about short game and a long game for courses. Short game being activities in the classroom. So we have active learning, maybe a Kahoot, maybe clickers, and then long game where you can connect these activities into a journey, a player's journey or a hero's journey, as we know from books and movies, throughout the entire course. So one way to do that is through quiz tournaments in Blackboard. So here you can, before an exam, provide a large pool of questions and then time the quiz for perhaps just a 15-minute period of time. You set many, maybe 1,000 questions within the quiz, but the quiz automatically closes after 15 minutes, so students answer as many correctly as possible. And so by doing that, of course, they are looking through the questions, and the grade book then sorted by the grade in the quiz will tell you who won this particular assignment. Course reports. Here we can use the Blackboard course reports to see which students have clicked most within the course, who perhaps spent the most time in the course. Now, these short game approaches, you don't have to advertise perhaps ahead of time. Daniel Pink made this fairly explicit that some rewards need to be based on completion and then saying, oh, now that you've completed it, here is your reward. Because if you announce ahead of time that we're going to run a game where most clicks are going to win, you probably are going to have some side effects that you were not expecting. So after the first week of an online class, you can say, hey, by the way, here's a little feedback on who within the first week completed the most clicks, and you don't have to do that ever again in the course. And even you don't have to provide a reward of any specific substance other than mentioning it, and you will notice that students will look at this behavior as something that you look forward to and something that they can perhaps improve. The second tool in Blackboard will be adaptive release, which allows, in my course, for example, to measure if a student found all the mark review points. So I have students at the beginning of the class look through the Blackboard course and mark all the elements of review. So they have to search for them. They don't know how many there are. And when they click in all of them, then adaptive release will open up a game code. And this game code happens to be text code that they enter into the game ledger, which gives them experience points. And that game ledger on the slide is at the bottom there, game.data2.com. It's a mobile app that allows me to use text codes as evidence of completion of missions or QR codes that are in the wild. And as students scan or enter codes, they get experience points through the class. The experience points are also built by optional assignments, and that way they're able to build on currency. Now, this currency of experience points can be later spent to pay for late assignments or to buy a recommendation on LinkedIn and other benefits within the class, none of them being directly linked to the grade, because it is important then to remember that the autonomy needs to be present. So if you make a game required, you're done. There's very little possibility that intrinsic motivation will occur. Of course, achievements and badges within Blackboard are a great way to provide milestones after major exams in my course. Let's say it's an Excel exam. If you complete the exam at 95% or more, the badge automatically pops up, and you can then export the badge to the Mozilla Backpack and then include it on your LinkedIn profile, or maybe print it out and provide it with your internship application. We also need to pay attention to partner integrations like Cengage, Pearson, Duolingo, or Kahoot. And what you can do is, after an activity, let's say that you have linguistic studies, and we do have a paper where this MyGame system platform was used at the University of Illinois at Chicago in the Germanic studies, where Duolingo was the major tool. And students were invited into the Duolingo class and asked just to practice on their own. And we could export a spreadsheet that showed their experience points, and those experience points then were imported into the MyGame system. But you could just as well imported into the Blackboard gradebook and to grant extra credit through that if you did not want to work with an experience points ledger. Kahoots are a nice way for me to keep attendance in the class, but also to reward participation. So when students answer correctly, they receive experience points. And I do want to mention the ECP program, the Blackboard Exemplary course program, because instructional design is truly a foundation for gamification. You have to have clear instructions in the game, and so the instructional value of courses can possibly be lost as we experiment with engagement techniques. So creating a gamification course and then putting it through the ECP program helps us to validate the instruction quality. And so the case study that is presented on the ResearchGate there shows a course that did earn the exemplary status in the program, and it was a gamified course. Okay, so the XP Ledger, again, game.data2.com. Faculty are invited to adopt this software. So I'm going to switch through the next slides because they are in the case study showing that the students were doing additional work without additional grade benefits, and then the number of missions being completed over multiple semesters. This was about a 2.5-year study with about 500 students. We have some data that shows relative success of the engagement within that particular course, and perhaps a quote here that, again, is more of a qualitative feedback, but even though the teacher doesn't take attendance, almost the whole class shows up every Monday, Wednesday, I feel the professor really works for the students in his class instead of expecting students to come to class because they're afraid they'll fail if they don't. So thank you very much for your attention. I invite you to look at my Twitter feed at smprof. There I posted a few research pieces on gamification very recently, but it's a way for us to share sort of an unofficial and early documents. At this point, are there any questions that we should perhaps address? I see there is a question about experience point ledger. So this is, again, the game.data2.com application, and the experience point ledger, basically, it's a parallel system of points to grades. Grades live their own life, and they're totally separate, and it's important that we can remove the experience points ledger at any time. Let's say administration or other faculty are saying we don't want that. You can remove that at any time, but it is a way to provide feedback on student experience within the course, and it's a way to shape experience of students and the experience of faculty as they have now the freedom to add to the curriculum and to provide difficult or easy optional assignments. Okay, is there a question that I should take a look at?
Simon,
Deborah,
there's one more question that came in. Yeah, there's one more question that came in about adaptive release. They would like more information about that.
So adaptive release is Boolean logic, which is built into Blackboard Learn. You can set any item in Blackboard to reveal itself based on specific conditions. So let's say that you would like to say to students, congratulations, you got an A on the Excel exam. You can link an item that you typed out and provided with pictures and the welcome congratulatory message, and then you can set that item to release based on the result of the grade per student in the gradebook. So adaptive release allows students to experience the Blackboard course in unique ways, which is sort of the basis for gaming. We want students to have unique ways throughout the course. And so adaptive release can serve in opening up new areas of the course for advanced students and perhaps other remediating areas for students who are falling behind. So adaptive release is a feature in Blackboard Learn. There is a documentation piece on it, but it is something that can be very powerful in helping students find the feeling of flow. The feeling of flow being between anxiety, which are assignments that are way too hard, assignments we're likely to cheat on, and then assignments that are too boring, assignments that we feel discouraged even to look at. So for every student, the feeling of flow in the class is different, which is why adaptive release can show those students various tasks which go either more difficult or a little easier and help them to find a way through the course that would be enjoyable to them, so to shape their experience.
Wonderful.